As you watch the screen, your heart begins to beat faster. There's a fluttering in the pit of your stomach. Your throat is dry. Your palms damp. Suddenly a chill runs down your spine. You clutch the person next to you. You tell yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. But sooner or later, it's time to go home. Shocktober.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Brian.
This is our review of The Last House on the Left, starring Sandra Peabody, Lucy Grantham, David Hess, Fred Lincoln, Jeremy Rain, Mark Scheffler, Richard Towers, and Cynthia Carr. Written, directed by Wes Craven, produced by Sean S. Cunningham, released in 1972 on a budget of around $90,000, grossed $3.1 million at the box office, and is held up by many film critics and horror fans alike as one of the seminal horror films of all time.
All right, Jay. So why exactly are we talking about this movie?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're beginning Shocktober here, and you're going, where's our Friday the 13th? Where's our A Nightmare on Elm Street? And it's in those two last names I read there in the opener, Wes Craven and Sean S. Cunningham. Of course, Craven behind Nightmare on Elm Street, and Sean S. Cunningham, the producer of the Friday the 13th movies, at least some of them. And I thought, we need a kickoff movie, I felt like, for our big Shocktober series. We're going to do both of those, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. And, I'm doing one of them with you, Ron, and the other one with Brian. And then we were going to culminate in the end and do Freddy versus Jason sort of together. And I thought, well, we need a beginning part of this program, and then we can come back to it with Freddy versus Jason. And on a complete whim, I didn't even know this was the case. I thought, is there anything these two guys have worked on together? Besides, both names being on Freddy versus Jason, and their involvement in that is, very varied, to say the least. And we'll get to that in a few months. But I was surprised to find out that Last House on the Left was a collaboration between the two of them, because Craven apparently had done some editing work on something Cunningham had directed, and it made it profitable. And so Cunningham said, I'll produce whatever you want to do, and this is what they came up with. And I thought, you know what? I've seen the 2009 version of Last House on the Left with Tony Goldwyn and Monica Potter. I had never seen the original. And I thought, okay, this will be a good excuse. And I want to apologize to you two guys and to everybody else right now that I decided this was where we needed to start this series. But yeah, that was it. I thought, hey, this is a good starting point, because I thought, if nothing more, if we're going to do a little horror homework here, if you will, to start our series, is there anything in this film that maybe we see again in the Friday series and the Nightmare series?
No.
Knives.
Blood. There's nudity.
Chainsaws.
No, there's no chainsaws.
Yeah, well, there's one. There's one in one of those Friday movies. So,
Steve Miner.
Yes.
He was assistant editor on this particular movie, and he did some of the better Friday the 13th.
Also directed H2O, Brian's favorite Halloween movie. So that's to be. Yeah, he's part of the crew here too. So now, had either of you seen this 1972 feature beforehand, though?
Oh, hell no.
Yes, I had seen it.
Whoa, you didn't stop him?
This was before I knew Jay. I went on a kick to watch a bunch of directors' first movies, and this was one of the ones I watched, unfortunately.
But you didn't bother to say, are you sure you want to do this, Jay?
Actually, you were surprised by the little factoid, too, if memory serves, Ron. You didn't put it together that Cunningham and Craven had done this together.
It had been so long since I'd seen this movie and I'd worked so hard to put it out of my mind that that it completely took me by surprise.
So now, Brian, go ahead.
I'm still blown away that it made $3.1 million at the box office. Now, in today's money, that's nothing, but 1972?
Well, on a budget of $90,000, though, that made everybody got rich on that. I mean, I would dare say, and I don't know it for a fact, I bet Craven made a better percentage off of this than he did the first Nightmare film. So, because I
think that because it grossed so much on that tight budget is why he got the Nightmare film.
Well, and no doubt. I mean, that's how it happened. You know, Carpenter got future work after making so much out of Halloween. You know, that was a $300,000 movie that made way beyond that. So yeah, that's what happens. A lot of first-time directors, right? They come out of the gate, their thing is successful, and then now they get work because they turn stuff in on time. They make profits. Look, for everybody who wants to bang on Michael Bay and Brett Ratner, and for good reason in a lot of ways, with those guys, they turn in stuff on time, under budget, and it always makes money. You know, Kevin Smith's a guy that I've liked and not liked a lot of his career, and have really kind of fallen out with him in terms of enjoying his stuff. But he turns in stuff on time, under budget, and makes money. He's never lost money on a film. So there's something to be said for guys in Hollywood that can do that, and particularly in this time of era of film. I mean, you're talking about the 70s. This was the end of the studio system was coming in, maybe 10 years, 15 years. They were all going to be corporations after that. But these independent directors were starting to rise up out of places like New York and Northern California and lots of different places. And Craven and Cunningham were New York guys, and they were East Coasters. And I'll tell you, I mean, Craven will tell you in all the material that's recorded, of course he's gone now, but about this is that he made this film with absolutely no inhibition at all. He just said, I'm just going to do everything and I'm not going to censor any of it. He wasn't even aware the MPAA was a thing. Sean Cunningham had to tell him, dude, this is going to get cut to pieces. And Cunningham makes jokes that like they spent years reclaiming prints from different places that had shown this film, trying to cut together an original version of it because people had just cut it to bits at the time. Projectionists, the theater owners, stuff like that. So, how did it make this kind of money? I think word of mouth and the shock value of it. I mean, let's talk about shock exploitation cinema. Ron, if anybody's an expert on that of our crew, you are, because not only because you watch it, but you've written a lot about it too over at Den of Geek.
Yes, I have, and a lot of exploitation cinema is basically there just for shock value. I mean, you may be trying to say something, but what you're saying has to be spliced in between some graphic murders, some pointless nudity, maybe some cannibalism. There are certain tropes that you have to hit. There are certain boundaries you have to push as an exploitation movie, and this hits a lot of them because it's just chock full of everything people were afraid of in the 70s.
Except for good dialogue.
Yeah. You ever watch a lot of 70s cinema? I mean, some of it ain't that grand, man. I'm going to tell you, some of it's pretty bad. So.
It's not all Robert Altman movies.
That is for sure. So...
But yeah, this is definitely one of the big tent poles of exploitation flicks in the 70s, because you've got a lot of imitators of Last House on the Left came after this. Like, you've got your I Spit on Your Graves. You got even Wes Craven's next movie, or one of his next movies, The Hills Have Eyes, takes a lot of the same kind of elements of people trapped in a strange environment surrounded by a bunch of dangerous rednecks.
Oh, exactly. And who can forget, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I was sitting there watching this going, man, I had no idea Tobe Hooper, in between smoking joints, was watching this movie on the set of that, because jeepers creepers, there's so much of this that I see in that original Chainsaw flick. Oh,
yeah, definitely. It's like... I like how you mentioned that Wes Craven basically left everything in, because it really shows, because this movie is just all over the place. Like, this is Cocaine the movie.
for real.
Well, it's cocaine with John Denver. That's the other part. We're going to talk about the music used in this. This is an example. They've got to show this as an example of how to not score your film. And oddly enough, on my DVD, there's a feature on scoring, Last House on the Left, and I was like, holy cow, they actually put thought into this.
Well, and they had a band they're going to see called Bloodlust, and they're playing that kind of crap.
I love the
expecting
Bloodlust.
some good metal music.
In 72, though, that would have been what?
Black Sabbath.
Yeah, that would have been
yeah.
So I don't even think Maiden and Judas Priest were around at that point, at least not in the mainstream, not famous, not where teenage girls would go see them. So
no, but you had Thin Lizzy and Black Sabbath at that point, and a few metal bands that were out there, and
King Diamond.
With the name. Well, that was England, but if you had a name like Bloodlust, you would think that would be more the type of music you'd hear, not the the crap we heard.
Not the easy 70s listening. I see the flowers in the trees as your throat gets cut. You know, I mean, it's really messed up. So, or maybe it's the greatest use of ironic music ever. I don't know. But, to me, that'll always be Mr. Sandman at the beginning of Halloween, too. But we talked about that a lot. But I guess we should do a plot summary, maybe for the uninitiated. I'll go ahead and say, in case you haven't seen this and you're listening to us before you watch it, don't watch it. We'll tell you what happens. You don't need to lay eyes necessarily. You can decide after we talk about all of it if you want to. But
I can't wait for this plot summary either, because I don't know that there was a plot to this fucking thing.
Well, here's the best I can do. So Mary is about to turn 17, and while trying to score some weed before a concert, Bloodlust, as Brian's mentioned, with her friend Phyllis, they cross paths with a group of escaped psychotic convicts. The convicts Krug, Weasel, and their companions, the sadistic Sadie and drug addict Junior, take turns brutalizing and torturing the girl throughout the night and into the next day. When Phyllis finally makes a run for it, Krug, Weasel, and Sadie give chase, and Mary, realizing she is near her family's country home, tries to reason with Junior to let her escape. After killing Phyllis, the other three stop Mary and Junior and brutalize her and murder her, leaving her body in a lake. The foursome then clean up and stop by the Collinwoods' house, Mary's parents, masquerading as traveling salespeople. Mary's parents dine with the group and even agree to let them stay overnight. But when Mrs. Collinwood finds their bloody clothes and her daughter's necklace, she realizes, along with the doctor, that something's wrong. They rush to the woods and they find Mary's body. The parents then exact their revenge on the house guests as one by one they're taken out. Mrs. Collingwood seduces Weasel to go outside for a little romp and then bites his penis off and leaves him to bleed to death. Krug and the doctor fight until Junior intervenes with a gun. However, the mentally weak Junior turns the weapon on himself after taunting from Krug. Mrs. Collingwood catches up with Sadie and slits her throat, and Dr. Collingwood eventually kills Krug with a chainsaw just as the most inept police force known to man shows up to the carnage and the credits roll. And that is the plot summary as best I could see it for Last House on the Left, without getting into the gory details.
Unbelievable.
I think you've already gotten into some of the gory details, but with the biting off of a penis.
Well, that was so evocative, and the way that was set up. And I mean, I'm sitting there.
Uh-oh. Jay went silent.
Oh.
Oh, anyway, we'll get there, but it's
you went
pretty
silent.
It's pretty brutal. I must have hit the mute button. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, it's been recording on my end the whole time, so yeah.
Good.
We'll fix that. All right, so I think a way to do this, though, because as Brian has alluded, the plot here is really thin. That's strung together. This movie's 84 minutes. It could have been about 30, I think. There's a lot of...
Yeah.
I mean, watching this, I felt like, man, Wes Craven must have shot some of the greatest PBS nature documentaries I watched, and I just never knew.
Oh, yeah, how many times do they use the ducks in the pond?
At least 3.
I was just... as I watched it again, I was watching it for the podcast. I was like, man... This is like B-roll the motion picture.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It does feel like, and maybe this is what was spliced together after what was left when they sent this out, but it does feel like just a lot of tracking shots and things. I think one of my favorite ones is when the girls are in an ice cream parlor and they do like a fast pan across the menu. It's like something I would shoot on vacation when I was 13, like, oh, here's the menu,
My favorite part of that scene is when she says, "What are you getting?" "Oh, I'm getting pepper or peppermint chocolate chip. Oh, I don't like that. Can I try yours?
I know, yeah. Like there's a whole dialogue about ice cream in this. Yeah, it's weird.
You just said you don't like it. Why did you want to try it?
I am convinced if there was a script that the dialogue was large chunks of, and now the girls talk about ice cream.
It was an outline, Jay. We know it. It was just an outline.
Yeah, it actually was an outline, and I heard a lot of the dialogue was improvised, which is probably why it all sucks.
Obvious.
Oh, see, I did not know that, and I can believe that completely because yes, the dialogue is absolutely awful. And Brian, you mentioned to me, you're like, it's hard to believe that the guy that wrote Nightmare wrote this. And I want you to remember that when we review that first Nightmare movie, because I'm going to tell you right now, the dialogue in that blows.
Well, sure, but it's witty.
Probably
there's
because Craven didn't write it.
And humor in there. Not in this.
No, you're right. This movie is stark and, dare I say it, bare naked in front of us here. And it is concocted to offend. Like, Craven will tell you that his entire idea was, how sick can I show this and show also that good normal people can be just as sick and twisted? I think that's the theme of the film here, ultimately.
Okay. It's so bizarre, Jay. I mean, it starts off, they're sitting there and the daughter comes down and the father's getting on her case for not wearing a bra.
Yeah, that stuck out like a sore nipple. It was just the weirdest thing to start your movie off with. It's like, okay, is this going to be like some kind of incest picture?
Right? Really? I cannot imagine any father, even a medical doctor who, may be immune to all of the anatomy of life or whatever, to having that conversation with his teenage daughter, and then the mother weighing in too, and they have this whole conversation about, styles of underwear. So I'm like, no one talks like, even today in the over-sexualized world we live in the 2010s, like, I don't think people talk like this, except maybe the Kardashians.
And what self-respecting father, especially back in the 1970s, would say to their daughter who's going to the rough neighborhood to watch a concert that it's okay to go braless? You're 16, go for it.
And it also sets the movie up as like, oh, well, she's clearly a slut, so I guess she deserves all this.
Ouch.
It's almost, it's like it's setting her up for some premeditated slut shaming.
See, now I didn't see that with her. I saw it with her friend. Right? She seemed like the kind of person who gives it up to anyone who wants it.
Who was cooling stolen liquor in the nearby lake, which I thought, good idea, ingenious, maybe. But yeah, I didn't get the sense that either of these girls were particularly slutty necessarily. I did read off of them that they were part of that, and even the mom drops a line about the free love society and stuff like that, that they were just a reflection of that youth culture that was much freer with their sexuality and their bodies than previous ones have been, particularly the 50 set, parents, right?
I don't know. Those parents seem pretty active with each other.
I was about to get to that, but then Craven goes out of his way to show us these parents can't wait for the kid to leave so that they can get randy after they make a cake together, right?
What a great cake too, huh?
The store-bought ones are better.
I like that he takes this little dab and puts on his tongue and he's like, yum. Terrible.
That's another pre-Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of trope that Wes Craven has tapped into, like the death of the free love generation. Because that was one of the whole big themes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first one is that they massacre a bunch of hippies. And here we got a couple of braless flower children who are about to walk into some chaos that they can't handle.
But the girls, though, they talk about this, they have this whole conversation when they're walking in the woods together in scene number 7 of that, where the one girl's going, can't you notice the difference? They came in this year. And I'm like, I mean, this is the point. My wife watched
know you.
my wife watched about 15 minutes of this with me, and she's like sitting there with this corkscrew look on her face, and I'm like, at no time do women like talk to each other like this, right? Like, not in real life. She said only in some 13-year-old boy's fantasy. And that's when I realized that Wes Craven had decided to shoot his 13-year-old fantasy. I mean, this can only be the stuff that is of that ilk, right? Like, that's the mindset, at least at play here. Because to say the women here are objectified is not even covering it.
Well, just the fact that she says they came in, you know, I didn't have them last summer, and the other girl goes, I didn't know you last summer. What the hell? I mean, come on. You could tell, yeah, this is definitely an ad-lib movie all the way.
And can you really call what she's got breasts? Like, is that all that's going to come in?
Well, yeah, probably.
It was the 70s. I mean,
Yeah.
the opening shot of the movie is her in the shower, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
You know, like at first I thought, is this the mom in the shower? Oh, no.
That's what I thought, too.
This is the teenage girl. I was like, well, that's, you know, unnerving and off-putting. Like, I think what it is here, guys, is normally these things are tropes of films that are supposed to be like tantalizing, right? Titillating, if you will. But they're presented in a way to make you really uncomfortable and off kilter. And then the dialogue aids in that because it's so awkward and weird and strange and overly done. And so when all the violent stuff starts to happen, it's like the next progression of it, right?
Yeah, I think you've got a good point there. It really is it's really is a deliberately off-putting movie, and it's really successful at being uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. The rape scenes alone.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, and we can gloss through those in a minute, but let's talk about, though, we talked about Mary and Phyllis a little bit. Let's continue and talk about the parents here a little bit. Estelle and Dr. Collingwood. I don't know if we ever get a name on him, but I called him Mr. Dr. and Mrs. the whole time, but they seemed like they were straight out of, like, I don't know, man, like All in the Family.
Brady Bunch?
Or, yeah, Brady Bunch extras, something. I mean, they were like square, but then when they got alone, they were just the same thing that they thought their teenager was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My wife kept commenting on the woman's sideburns.
It was the 70s.
She couldn't believe it. We had nothing better to talk about during this movie, so.
Clearly. But no, I mean, what did you make of them, though, as characters? They're paper thin, obviously, but I mean, I felt like we didn't really know them, and that they were also the most trusting humans on the planet when they do let these strange people into their house and just like, yeah, you can crash here with us. And I thought, is that the way it was in the 70s? We just lived in that innocent a time. Like nowadays, you don't walk outside to your mailbox without locking the door.
Yeah, it was definitely that way all the way up till probably the 90s, dude.
They really reminded me of a couple from a different Wes Craven movie. Mommy and Daddy from The People Under the Stairs.
Oh, wow. I've never thought about that, but that is a great point. Yeah, they do feel like Everett McGill. And
yeah, the same
life.
Like Bizarro World 1950s meets, dirty modern times kind of parent figure.
Okay, first of all, convenience that her body just so happens to wash up in their backyard. Nice. But after they find the body and all the clues, here he is downstairs looking for things to, I don't know, attack them with. And the one thing I didn't get is they show this elaborate setup of him like running these wires and making these booby traps, and yet none of them ever come into play.
Not true. Not true. The electrical one to the door, that's how Krug doesn't get away at the end, is he grabs that door latch and gets shocked back onto the ground. That's
so I must have been real pissed off at this point that I totally missed that.
It's the last 3 minutes of the film, granted.
How does it electrocute him? He doesn't even attach it to anything. He puts it under a rug and then pours some sort of chemical on it.
I think that's supposed to be like the thing that the water or whatever, the wet that will conduct the electricity through the shoes somehow. I don't know. They don't explain it.
From where?
But from the wall. There is a socket. He's pulling wires out of a socket.
Plug it in. No, he's got this wire. He's running around and wrapping around shit, and he never plugs it into anything. He goes right up to a wall socket and gets ready to, he splays the wires and everything like he's going to hook it up and never does.
But at least they make use of the trip line and the shaving cream Home Alone
The shaving
trap.
cream, that was good. That actually worked.
It was a Home Alone trap. You're right. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he has the wherewithal to grab a shotgun. It only puts one shell in and completely fucks that up.
Well, but he even makes a joke out of it later when he almost gets shot with it. It's sorry, Krug only had one shell, and then he comes at him with the chainsaw. I mean, I thought that was kind of clever. Is that he's running around just looking for stuff at random. He can't find anything, so he's like, "Screw it, I'll just go with the one." And he's out of his mind. I mean, let's not forget what they found and what they saw had happened to their daughter. These people lost their minds. I mean, they're
absolutely. But here's the thing: they took off running from that house. Like they were running through the woods. Like they knew exactly where they were going to find their daughter. Right? Yeah. They find the daughter and then decide, let's go back and murder them.
I can only imagine that as the mom is feeling the bloody clothes and the necklace and all that stuff, she feels that they're wet because they've washed off in that lake, and maybe she's like, "Oh, it's the duck pond, just down the road." Because we get a shot when they're down there. Mary looks, and that when they first pull them out of the dang trunk, they're right by her driveway. Like and the stupid amazing, cops. Right? I love the cop that hits himself in the head like, "Dude, we should have looked at that car." So missing persons in the area, and there's a strange car with the trunk pop. Nah, that ain't got nothing to do with it. I mean, Gomer and Goober here are taking over for Andy on the weekend. Because, by the way, did you notice the deputy who that was, Brian? It's the sensei from Cobra Kai in The Karate Kid.
I thought it was John Travolta.
It does have that Travolta-like chin. You're right. I even commented. I was like, how do you shave that dimple? Like, I don't know how you
exactly.
get into that, but maybe somebody can tell me on the forums. You can tell how invested in this I was. There were parts of this movie where I'm sitting there going like, really? Do I even have to listen to this anymore? So,
what'd you think of the old lady with the chickens? Missing all of her teeth.
The lady in the front with the teeth. Yeah, let's talk about 70s exploitation. The rural black person.
Hauling the chickens everywhere. Stops and tells them to get on the roof. Now,
I mean, right
away, you knew that was a bad idea.
Social justice warrior PC bro would lose his mind over that these days. You wouldn't do it anyway. They don't do it. You wouldn't do it anyway. But back then you did. And again, I think that was an evocative kind of thing. Ron hit on it. Everything in this movie is deliberately set up to piss somebody off. Like, there's nobody to latch onto. You don't like any of these people. There's no reason to like any of them. They're all horrible. And we haven't even talked about the convicts yet. We've talked about the four main protagonists. We haven't even talked about the killers.
Yeah, our so-called heroes are creepier than the killers.
That's probably because they're actually fleshed out. Let's talk about Krug, Weasel, Sadie, and Junior for a minute, if we can. I don't know any of these people from anything else. Apparently, David Hess, who plays Krug, was like a hit singer-songwriter, and one of his big ones was All Shook Up, which Elvis made a hit out of. So go figure that out. That I'm dude
incredibly sad now.
It ruins that song for you, doesn't it? Forever. So, but these, I mean, they could not have caricatured four more repugnant people in my mind at all.
Oh, yeah. You've got, Krug gets his own son addicted to heroin to control him.
I was really confused for a little while as to whose son was whose, because I was like, that dude doesn't look old enough to have a son that old. Like, right? The gray-headed weasel, I thought he was Krug for so long. I had that totally screwed up in my notes forever. It took me a long time to get that sorted out.
It doesn't really make a difference.
It really doesn't. You're right. But you agree with me, right? Krug and Junior do not look like father and son.
Well, they actually look a lot alike as far as style and hair and everything else goes. But yeah, they both look like they're the same age.
Yeah, I would have taken them as like brothers or something. I didn't get the whole thing. But you're right. He gets his own son addicted to smack so he can control him. There's your drug.
Brilliant.
Reference of the day, right?
Writing that down.
Yeah.
Hey, you got 3 tries coming up with that. So. But no, really, Yeah, I didn't.
What was the deal with Sadie? Was she some sort of wild animal person?
They describe her as an animal-like woman, and I'm like, I don't understand what that means. She's just kind of, I don't know. She seems crazy though.
She seems like she's on heroin.
No, she's too active to be on heroin. She seems like she's on speed.
Yeah,
me too.
Definitely.
She's on something psychotic. That's for
sure. Or she's just freaking nuts. That could be it too. I mean,
maybe she's supposed to be like a stand-in for one of the Manson girls, and she's just had her brain fried by LSD.
Okay, I got this whole Manson girl vibe off of her because, and this is awful because I'm actually going to talk about a person that really existed in life now. There's a TV movie of a famous murder that happened in the late 70s. At Fort Bragg, North Carolina, called Fatal Vision. I've read the book and all the case and all the stuff. It's Jeffrey McDonald murders. But one of the people involved in that side story that he tried to pin it on was the hippies did it. And there was this woman that ran around the area called Helena Stokely that was supposedly involved in this. Now, the real Helena Stokely was this real kind of demure, quiet woman. But the woman they got to play in the TV movie, I swear, it's this woman's younger sister. I mean, she looks just like Jeremy Raines. She acts like her, but it's supposed to be based off like Manson family era hippies. And I had the same note. I was like, Manson family. Like, this girl wasn't cool enough to be in the Manson family because this is in New York. We found out because they're trying to get to Canada, but she's obsessed with that, and she's constantly teasing her hair. And my wife asked me, is she having sex with one of them while they're driving down the road and like he's sitting next to his buddy?
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is.
Okay, see, again, something thrown in there simply to offend and throw us off our game, right? Because there's nothing.
A long damn scene too.
It's a long drive, apparently.
And we have to have sex the whole time.
Well, I guess Richard Dreyfuss saw something he liked in that scene because he married her.
I did not know Richard Dreyfuss was married to this woman.
Oh yeah,
no way. Are they still together or?
No, they got divorced in like the 90s, but they have 3 kids together.
Holy cow. Can you imagine like growing up and your kids are discovering your career and they're like, I mean, you thought Sydney from Scream was screwed up when she found out what a hoe her mom was. You know, imagine what these kids thought. Like, holy cow, Mom.
They were married for 12 years.
Wow.
And she only did 3 movies and they were all like filthy grindhouse movies.
She's the one of all of them that I just felt like I just got like this grimy sort of, I need to go take a shower, after watching this. Like, she just is so off-putting. And I think that's on purpose. Like, she's the one that plays with the, Phyllis's insides, and they cut her open and she's disemboweling her and all that
was
crap.
Gross, yeah.
Yeah,
they all kind of look like they smell, but she looks like she smells the worst.
Really? Yeah, and like when the first assault happens inside of the room that they have, like, Mary's standing back with Junior and she's like, no, and all you hear is this stuff on the ground, and what you realize is that Krug, Weasel, and Sadie are all taking turns on Phyllis.
Yeah, and you got the vibe that she was down for that right away.
Oh yeah, she grabs her by the chest and they have this whole don't touch her again, and it was very disturbing. And I think it's supposed to be. That's the thing, is I'm sitting here going like, I'm freaked out and eked out by this, and that's exactly the point. Craven wants me to be really uncomfortable with this.
Definitely. And success.
But it
was very uncomfortable many times.
But is it too successful? Does it try too hard to be uncomfortable and thus completely fail as a movie?
See, yeah, I would argue
definitely.
Yes, because it puts me out. Go ahead, Brian.
I would argue yes as well. I mean, to me, this was just in there, and every time something happened like this, where they're either raping them or even the murders, it was just like, do we really need this in the movie? Because it does nothing other than go, hurry up.
Yeah, I have to admit, most of this I watched in quotation marks because I just let it run in the background on my laptop while I watched Saturday Night Live recordings as like a palate cleanser.
Oh, yeah, I had this on the television, and I'm sitting there on my iPad taking notes, and there's a moment on my notes. Let me find it here, because it's when I stopped and I just started playing on Facebook again or something, and clicking through, watch Mojo videos or, 10 worst things that have ever happened in the history of ever. I wrote down to myself, this is sick and sadistic, and this is the point where I got really disgusted. What in the world is going on? Why was the world this way? Never mind, I don't want to know. And that was the last note I wrote about this film. So yes, I would argue that it completely succeeds and then fails in its goal. It succeeds in repulsing me to the point that I don't want to watch it anymore. And I really I watched probably the last 10 minutes of this with the sound down where I could just barely hear it, because I realized there was nothing that was going to be said that friggin' mattered. So I just
there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue in the last 10 minutes anyway.
I turned it back up when Krug and Junior have their standoff, and he convinces Junior to blow his head off, because I wanted to hear what he was saying, and he just repeats the same 3 lines over and over again.
Right.
And he convinces him to do it, and that's, Junior supposedly has a change of heart.
So you're telling me you missed the whole dialogue from the blowjob scene?
I heard it and paid no mind to it, so I couldn't tell you what was said. It's something about I can make love to you with my hands tied behind my back, because when they showed that, I was like, well, they obviously set that up. So
you missed the best parts then, where he's talking about how he can come over and over and over again, and how he's going to come for her, and how she's going to make him come, and how he's going to come now, and how, oh God.
I'm glad I
come over and over again.
I am glad I missed every single bit of that. Thank you for recreating it for me. I won't sleep for a week.
Was that like a new term or something? That they
in the 70s? I mean,
let's see. When was Deep Throat?
That's what I was about to say. When did Deep Throat come out? Well, that would have been around
something.
Yeah, they've been around the same time, because we were talking about, that happened to Nixon and all that. Deep Throat came out in the 70s or the late
1972. 60s. I looked it up.
1972. We're right there.
Maybe it was right in there, and I'm certain Deep Throat wasn't the first film to use that term. So maybe it was. Maybe it was new, and again, that's why they put it in there. And they put it in there. It's why the actor decided to go with it. Craven wouldn't have known that if you'd have slung it at him. That's what's so funny about this. Everybody's like, oh, Wes Craven used to be a Baptist minister. How could he dare do this? Wes Craven didn't write a word of this. He just came up with the scenario, and these actors just went with it. So whoever Fred Lincoln was and his sick, twisted self, he'd probably seen Deep Throat, or something like that, and probably had been a part of some of that stuff, and it's been to the dirty movie theater and all that, and just went with it. And most likely was sitting there going like, this thing's getting cut. They ain't never going to let a line of this in there. And then when he saw it, he was like, holy shit.
And it did, yeah.
So, yeah.
I find it fascinating that Deep Throat the movie and Deep Throat the Watergate scandal all happened in the same year. It's fascinating. Anyway.
Yeah.
Side point.
That's one of the things about this movie. It got cut several times.
Oh, yeah.
And it never passed. So Wes Craven put the movie back together the way he wanted it, and had a friend give him a NPAA R rating tag off of a different movie that he just spliced into his film. And that's how it passed the MPAA.
I want to tell you that is the most awesome Rebel story ever. I love Wes Craven just for that, because again, he was completely blown away by the fact that there was a group of people that could tell him what to put in it. He was so unaware of the MPAA and all. He had no idea any of that even existed. And Cunningham's over there going like, "We're never going to get this passed, man. This is never going to go." And he's like, "Who cares what anybody thinks about it?" And poor old Cunningham over there is like, "I do. I got $90,000 riding on this." So, I mean, Cunningham, the ultimate producer, trying to somehow make a profit out of this thing. And goodness gracious, they did. That's what blows my mind, is how they ever got this to go far enough that people would pay over and over to see it. I mean, they talk about The Exorcist as people were fainting and falling out and throwing up in the theater. I have to imagine it was the same thing for this. Ron, do you know anything about any of that?
I know that Roger Ebert got a lot of hate mail for defending the movie and for giving it a good write-up, which is really funny, because the same guy went and crapped all over Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which to me is a much better movie.
Yeah, much better made and much better point. That
and Michael Rooker's performance in that is just phenomenal. Like to really unsettling degree that this movie can't match.
Oh, it's the best thing he ever did, next to Days of Thunder, in my opinion. But I mean, no, it's really the best thing he ever did. It's an amazing performance, and it's a disturbing film in the same right. But I think the other thing is the plot here, like the idea, is actually a really interesting one. You think you're normal and you're sophisticated, and look, these people probably thought that they were really forward thinking because they let their 16-year-old daughter go out to a concert and they got no problem with that, and she's not wearing underwear and they're okay with that, even though they're not really sure that's okay, but they're going to let her do it. They're real progressives, and then this happens and they go just as bat crazy as the people who did the stuff to their daughter, right? Like, I think the idea of that is an interesting germ, and it's something that I think the 2009 remake does a much better job of playing because there's an actual script and some dialogue and people that know how to deliver it. The idea here is neat. The delivery of it, though, again, is so repulsive. It's hard to sit through it. Like, I cannot imagine ever watching this again. I own the DVD because I bought it for $1 off of Amazon. It's going to the shooting range with me this weekend. Like, that will not make it past many rounds through my weapon because I never want to see this again. Like, I saw it, I did my homework, and I never want to talk about it again. This movie is ridiculous.
It's funny how we talked about smut movies and Deep Throat and all that stuff, because after this movie, Fred Lincoln, the cum guy, directs like all the porn.
I can totally believe it now. That makes total sense.
I pulled him up on IMDb to try to find something out about him, and we've got all kinds of just anal intruder 10.
I can imagine it's like the list that Randall reads in Clerks.
It basically is. Yeah.
Yeah, that he probably directed half of this. That Smith and his guys were leaning on.
And you're right about this being like a compelling story, but if you want to see it done in a way that is not
story,
well, it's an interesting idea. What turns normal people into killers. If you want the good version of this, just go watch The Virgin Spring, the Ingmar Bergman movie, because that's where they got this idea.
And I have not seen that one, but I can only imagine it's much more palatable than this one is.
Well, it's Max von Sydow. And he's awesome.
Never mind. Yeah. So okay. Well, then the class in that one is up by a factor of 400 at this point. So I want to make something clear because I hear Brian rustling against it there, and I would not at any time say that this is worthwhile art to watch young women brutalized and made to brutalize each other and all of the sick, sadistic, sexual shit that happens in this movie. No, not at all. I'm not going to even call that entertainment. The idea, though, again, of if these awful things happened and the awful people it would take to do them to someone, what if it turns out your normal square parents could be just as awful if pushed the right way? Like, that idea is interesting and fascinating. It's delivered poorly, but the idea is interesting to me.
So can I just say that this movie was named at one point Sex Crime of the Century.
Ugh, awful.
And Krug and Company, and then finally The Men's Room.
Wow. Before
settling upon The Last House. Can we talk about the title? Are we to assume that Mary's house is the last house on the left, or where they got kidnapped was the last house on the left? What are we supposed to come with that?
I think it's her house is the last house on the left because they talk about it being so close to Canada.
Last house on the left on the way out of town?
It's on the way out of the country is the way I took it because they're going to Canada. They're trying to escape. They've escaped prison and they're on their way to Canada. That's dropped by the mysterious radio voice and the inept police throughout the film. Oh, that was when I had the volume up, though, Brian, so it may have changed, but that was what I understood at that point.
All right.
So are you telling me, Jay, that you don't believe the all exposition radio station was a good plot device?
All exposition 95.6. Yeah, no, yeah, really.
Thanks for the idea.
I mean, really, yeah, that was.
It's of exposition from the 70s, 80s, and today.
Exactly. It's perfect. that way. No, it was a character. And in fact, it was some of the better delivered lines. The dog's barks were also very good on cue. I will say that little rat thing was cute, and I really expected it to get like killed and thrown in a tree and they eat it. You know, like at some point I thought this movie's just going to do everything to offend me and bother me, so why not? I mean, I figured they would go there. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad Muffin survived, but or whatever its name was. But yeah, I can't imagine this movie being any more repulsive than it was. But I mean, I did not see the uncut version. Thank goodness. I don't know what that would look like, but I don't want.
Oh, let me tell you, there's a lesbian rape scene in the lost scenes list.
But that's implied. That's implied that they make Phyllis do that to Mary. Like you almost see that.
No, well, so we have, right. So that's true. They have the two female victims forced to do things to each other, but also Mary raped by Sadie.
Oh, okay.
So she got Phyllis first, and then she went back for Mary, I assume.
I guess.
So if you get the uncut DVD, you can see that scene if you really want to.
I'd rather not, and I don't recommend either of you do it either. So, Brian, you and I watched the same version of it. Ron, which one did you watch of it?
I think I watched the one that you guys watched.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, you did because I ripped my DVD.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Let me cut that. So never mind. So okay. Anyway,
interesting note in the Krug and Company cut. Mary is still alive when her parents find her.
Yeah, that's actually something they hang on to in the remake. The girl, as a matter of fact, does not die. They find her shot and wounded,
she dies.
But
she tells her parents what happened.
No, but I'm talking about in the remake they hold on to that, but she actually lives. It's Sarah Paxton who plays her, and she lives till the end. Spoiler alert. So they do change that in the new one, but I didn't realize that she survived. I thought she was dead. I mean, she looked plenty dead to me.
She was in the final movie, but in the Krug and Company version of the movie.
The Krug and Company version.
She's alive, sounds like the parents find her. Which I thought she was faking her death at first. They shot at her, and I thought she was faking it, but then they shot her like 16 times. So I was like, well, okay, she's probably dead now.
With a gun that only holds 5 rounds, by the way, which that was nice editing.
Details.
Clearly not paid.
Which is weird because they established that there's only one shell in the shotgun.
Right, but the pistol, it was, unending ammo. Well, they had the unending ammo pack there, and then they left it when they washed in the creek. So I also read something, and you guys tell me if you took it this way, is that them washing off in the creek is supposed to be them coming to terms with the fact that they've crossed the final line of decency and humanity left in themselves, and they're supposed to be somewhat redeemed. And I'm like, no, I think they were just washing the blood off themselves. I didn't get that at all.
Gross.
Yeah, I mean, you've been walking around with somebody's hand and her guts in your hand all day. That's not something you just.
Yeah, when did they carve her hand off? Did they use that big machete to do that?
That's what I was wondering, because that little switchblade, sure enough, wasn't going to do it. Well, it would, but it'd be like that cat that got stuck in the canyons and took days to do it. So no, they didn't do that hanging out in the woods and then go catch Marion Jr. But. Well, guys, I think we're at the point of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, popcorn ratings. So what are yours for Last House on the Left? Ron, we'll start with you.
Is there a size smaller than small?
Oh, yes. You have to listen to some of our reviews.
I mean, I could go as high as a small popcorn, just because it's very successful at making me feel very uncomfortable and making me want to Windex my television after watching it to try to get some of that grime off of it. But it's not entertaining. It's not witty. It's not fun. It's not even particularly like psychological. It's just more like venal. It doesn't affect the brain. It turns the stomach.
Okay, Brian, yours.
This is a popcorn so burnt you have to leave the house because it stinks so bad movie. I am dumbfounded that I even made it through watching this whole thing. I think it's the torture of the Leprechaun movies that have allowed me to do that. but that said, I don't think I've scratched my head in wonder more times watching a movie since we watched The Room.
I can't put it any lower than you two have. It's below a small. I'll actually say this. It is the worst thing I've ever had to sit through and watch. It's not the worst movie ever made. That's still after last season. But it is the worst time I've ever had reviewing something. Even though I knew it would be enjoyable to rip it to shreds with you two guys a little bit, I had no joy in watching any of this. There was nothing about it that I thought was redeemable at all. And to the credit, neither one of these guys ever went back down this far of the rabbit hole again, especially Craven. Like, he spent, in fact, a lot of his career trying to purposely not do this again. Maybe because he exercised it out of himself. I don't know. Is there a germ of something here that makes this film, quote, important? I don't know. I have a hard time saying that because I'm so repulsed by it. If that's the goal of this film, though, it succeeds, but it's also so repulsive that I can't watch it, and I wouldn't recommend anyone else ever do it either. It's a curious way to start what are going to become two of the most famous horror franchises ever for us, though, because I'll spoil it now. I like both of these franchises. I have a lot of fun in these, and they're a lot more fun than this thing ever would purport to be. And I'm kind of glad that none of this really is ever going to hang around in those coming series for us.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to watch a movie that's probably more unpleasant than this, go with I Spit on Your Grave. But I don't know why you would want to do that. And it would make me question your mental state if you chose to do that route. Although I do have I Spit on Your Grave on DVD because I bought it for the Joe Bob Briggs commentary, which is incredible.
I'm sure that would make it enjoyable, but there's nothing about watching this that is redeeming. But thank goodness this isn't the end of something. This is the beginning of something. This is going to be the biggest and longest Shocktober we've ever had because it's going to start in friggin' August and go all the way through. And, we've been doing this every other week release thing, and that's cool, and really appreciate people hanging in there with us while we've kind of stretched out the summer and into the early fall. But starting this week, as a matter of fact, you're going to start getting 2 podcasts a week from us all the way through the last full week of October. You're going to get Friday the 13th movies to start out with, and then when the numbers even up, you're going to get a Friday movie on one day, and you're going to get a Nightmare movie on the other day. Bron, you're going to review the Friday the 13th movies with me. That's all, 1 through 8, Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, the 2009 remake, and Brian, you're going to do Nightmare on Elm Street 1 through 6, New Nightmare, and the 2010 remake with me. And then we're going to skip one in the order there. We're going out of order with it. We're going to culminate right before Halloween with Freddy versus Jason, with all of us reunited to just sort of end our Shocktober. But I'm excited about it, fellas. It's been a while since I sat and watched through those series, and doing both of them at the same time, it's going to be fun to have them comparing side by side with one another.
Don't cross your streams.
Well, we are definitely going to be crossing streams and all kinds of things. But, we've done 2 of the what I call the big 4 horror series. We've done Hellraiser, we've done Halloween, and we've done the lesser ones. We've done Critters and Leprechaun, and we've done some one-offs and stuff. It was time to get to the other 2 big ones. And we were thinking about, we'll do one this year and one the next year or whatever. And then we were like, there's no time like the present. Let's do them both now, because they do cross over at the end, and it makes it perfect to do that. So I'm excited about this. This will be fun to talk about with you 2 guys and to go through with everybody as we do a long fall of Shocktober here for us. Of course, you can find tons of other reviews. We've referenced a lot of them tonight in our archive section. Go to our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Subscribe to us on iTunes. You can get back through all of the episodes there. We've got as we said, Leprechaun movies, Critters movies. We've even got American Ninja movies, a couple Chuck Norris flicks in there I've done with Ron. We've got some, Tales from the Crypt. We've got even, going way back, some, stuff like No Holds Barred and all kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, there's some real fun in the old continuous play gift bag, if you will. In fact, if you're in the Santa mood, we've got Santa's Sleigh. I dare you to go check that one out, folks.
That's fantastic.
Especially if you're a Bill Goldberg wrestling fan, like that's a must watch right there. So, and much better dialogue than this film, I promise you. So,
believe it or not, that's true.
That's right. And Brian, you and I still have 7 seasons of Buffy reviews out there, and like new people find that podcast all the time. The Art of Slaying.
Oh yeah, we get people commenting on it every couple weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild to think that that's still big, but it is. So all out there, of course, folks, you can read Ron's stuff over at Den of Geek. You've been reviewing Game of Thrones, the Walking Dead shows, all kinds of stuff that you're writing about, and people can find you there as well.
I'm doing the new Preacher show, so that'll be fun.
Oh, that will be a lot of fun. So, yeah, lots of cool stuff out there from your crew here at Continuous Play. And, of course, as always, we appreciate your support. And if you do subscribe on iTunes, leave us a good review. That helps other people find the show and the podcast. And we will definitely appreciate your support. We do this show because we like talking about movies, sometimes really bad ones together, if for nothing more than to heal each other from the experience. So until next time, for Brian and Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.